Right now, in the fields of Afghanistan and Pakistan, a different kind of battle is raging. This isn't a battle with armies, but one of farmers against the sheer force of nature. A relentless cycle of extreme weather is pushing communities to their absolute limit. And really, to get what's happening, you have to hear it from the people on the ground. Listen to this. It's from Abdul Sattar, a farmer in Herat. His words just perfectly capture the crisis. See, this isn't just about one big flood. It's about what experts call climate whiplash, this brutal swing from a crippling drought to a devastating deluge. One extreme slams into them right after another, leaving zero time to recover. I mean, you can just feel the desperation in his words, right? This is another farmer, Abdul Rahim Taimori, and he just lays it all out. We're talking about basic survival here. It's about losing every single thing you've worked for, your crops, your house, your whole life, and then facing that impossible choice of whether you stay or just leave everything behind. Okay, so those personal stories are just devastating, and they're really just the tip of the iceberg. Let's zoom out and look at the sheer scale of this thing, because the numbers, honestly, they're heartbreaking. Just let this number sink in for a second. Over 540 people. That's how many have lost their lives in Afghanistan alone since March because of this weather. And you have to remember, that's not just a statistic. Every single one of those numbers is a person, a family torn apart, a whole community left grieving. And here's where it gets even harder to stomach. The tragedy hits the most vulnerable the hardest. In just one of these flash floods in the country's northeast, 51 of the victims were children. Just kids. An entire generation is literally on the front lines of this. And the destruction, it's just total. It touches every single part of life. You've got thousands of homes just gone or so damaged you can't live in them. That's more than 7,500 families in Afghanistan, with thousands more in Pakistan. Nearly 100,000 acres of farmland. The very source of their food and income is just completely underwater. And then you have thousands of livestock washed away, wiping out a family's livelihood in the blink of an eye. So you see, this isn't just damage. This is the complete dismantling of entire communities. So you gotta ask, right? Why was this so bad? Why so severe? How does heavy rain become this kind of catastrophe? Well, it turns out it was a perfect storm of both the climate and the situation on the ground. It really was this brutal 1-2 punch from the climate. First, the winter was super dry. Afghanistan got like half its normal rainfall, so the ground was just baked, hard, totally parched. And then, bam, spring hits. Pakistan gets almost double its average rain in April. The hard, dry ground couldn't soak up any of it. All that water had nowhere to go. It's the absolute worst combination. Way too little water and then way, way too much. But you know, the weather itself is only half the story. What really turned a dangerous situation into a full-blown catastrophe were the vulnerabilities that were already there. For years, you've had widespread deforestation, so there are fewer trees to soak up the water. Then there's rapid, unplanned city growth, pushing people into areas that are known to flood. The drainage systems that are there just aren't good enough. They get overwhelmed instantly. And maybe most critically, there are hardly any early warning systems. Plus, decades of conflict have just worn down public services, leaving people completely exposed when disaster strikes. So, like we've seen, this kind of crisis always hits the most vulnerable the hardest. And that means we really need to talk about the kids. We're talking about a generation whose entire future is being washed away. This number, it's just staggering. More than 6 million. That's how many children across South Asia are now either displaced from their homes or living in areas at risk because of these floods. Think about that. 6 million childhoods just completely upended by chaos and uncertainty. Look, the floodwaters themselves are terrifying, obviously, but the dangers that come after can be just as deadly. Suddenly, you don't have safe drinking water, right? So you get these terrible outbreaks of diseases like diarrhea. There's not enough food, and that, plus sickness, means a huge risk of malnutrition and stunting for kids. Schools are either damaged or being used as shelters, so education just stops. And when kids are displaced, they are so vulnerable to abuse, to exploitation, and the deep psychological trauma of it all. I mean, these are the kinds of scars that can last a lifetime. Okay, so amidst all this devastation, there is hope. There is action. The story doesn't end here. It continues with people on the ground, humanitarians working around the clock to throw these communities a lifeline.
And a huge player in that response is UNICEF, the UN's agency for children. They work in over 190 countries, and their whole mission is about helping kids. So in a crisis like this, they are absolutely essential.
So what does that help actually look like on the ground? Well, it's a series of really concrete, life-saving steps. First, they're focused on preventing disease. That means getting clean water and hygiene kits out there fast. Second, it's about shelter. They're providing things like family kits, blankets, and tarps so people have a roof over their heads. Third, they're deploying mobile health and nutrition teams to treat anyone who's sick or injured, especially the kids. And finally, they're constantly doing assessments to figure out who is worst off and how to reach them, especially in those really remote areas.
And let's be really clear about something. This is not some random freak event. It's a symptom of a much, much bigger problem. Afghanistan is right there on the front lines of the climate crisis. In fact, it's one of the top 10 most climate vulnerable countries in the entire world. For them, this is the new reality, a cycle of extreme weather that's just getting more and more intense.
And all of this leaves us with one final and really urgent question. We know from the science that these kinds of extreme weather events are going to happen more often, and they're going to be more severe. So when you think about those millions of children caught in this cycle, the question isn't just for aid groups or for local governments. It's a question for every single one of us. Who is going to protect the next generation?